All right. So I want to talk about something else Jesus said. Okay, this takes place in the various Gospels. I think it takes place. Let me double check. In Mark 3, he goes and he heals a man on the Sabbath. You know, it was one of those things that Jesus, for some reason, always heals people on the Sabbath. In the Gospel of John, the only two times he heals people happens on the Sabbath, and it's just the way that it was. Let's see. He also does it in Luke. Um, in Mark and Luke, the Pharisees are watching along and they're just waiting for Jesus to mess up because that's what religious people do. They did it back then and they do it today. So Jesus sees this guy and he's got a withered hand and he says, "Come forward." And the Pharisees were just waiting to jump on him. And then he actually looks to these guys in the Luke's sixth chapter. um, Actually, one of these stories happens in the sixth chapter of Luke, and one of them happens in the 17th chapter of Luke. And when that happens, he says to them, "If one of you has a child or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull it out?" Now, Matthew has a very similar story, but Matthew says, "How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." And so, this is the argument that Jesus makes. If any one of these guys were about to lose something of value to them, like a sheep or an ox or a child, God forbid, should fall into some pit and not be able to get out, you're going to do what you got to do to get it out. So, Jesus sees someone who's hurting on the Sabbath day, and he does what he does and heals them. And of course, they make a big stink about it because, again, that's what religious people do. And so Jesus asks these guys, he says, "I ask you, which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or destroy it?" And in all three synoptic gospels, he says to the man, "Stretch out your hand." And his hand was completely restored. And earlier on, Jesus has mentioned this fact that the Sabbath was made for men. It gave men an opportunity to take a day off and to rest and recuperate because that is important for our bodies. We need that. We require that. That is why our body falls to sleep because it gives us that time to get rested and rejuvenated and all that. And the Jews had come out of 400 years of slavery where they didn't really have a day off. So this opened them up to, a better way to life. But oftentimes, when you have people who are religiously minded, and it's just a worldview that certain people have, we're tempted sometimes to take these things personally when people are overly religious or want to put their religion on other people. And unfortunately, it's just the small worldview that they have. And that's just the way people have evolved. And some people have these things that they stick to and are really, really, really important to them. And they're very quick to attack people when they see that not happening. But when you get down to the basic gospel of Jesus Christ, not the gospel of Judeo Roman American Protestant Christianity and all the man made shenanigans that were stuffed in there, but when you get down to the heart of Christ and the message of Jesus Christ in those red letters, where he says, "Love your God with all your heart, all your mind, all your body, and all of your strength," because the creator of all that is gave you your heart and your mind and your body and your strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself. Love each other, love one another. Different phrases for the same thing. And that is the gospel of Jesus Christ, that as we open to that and realize ourselves as conduits of the love of God in this kingdom of heaven, which we are in and which is in us, then we can grow and do magnificent things. However, you have a lot of people who are very mired in their religious ideology, just like these Pharisees were back in the day about their little Sabbath thing. These days in Judeo-Roman American, what is it, Protestant Christianity, the Bible is God. The Bible is the single most important thing to them, and that must be considered inerrant, infallible, and perfect. And in their warped little minds, either it is those three things or it is complete and utter rubbish. And it's this kind of just maddening scenario they've created for themselves that even Either this man-made book, legitimately, honestly, looking at history, man-made book compiled over many years, either it's inerrant, infallible, and perfect, or it's all crap. None of it matters. So that's the Sabbath of these days, where I try to still look at the idea that the message Jesus shared 2,000 years ago, when they were a horrifically violent people, where it was perfectly kind of acceptable to go ahead and kill a messenger who came to bring news you may not want. You could go ahead and kill him. You could rent property and then, use it to grow food on. And when the owner of the property came for his rent, you could kill his messengers and his son. You could do that and get away with it back then. Very violent. And it wasn't a time or a place where you really cared about your neighbor as yourself. That's why the teachings of Jesus were a bit progressive for that time. And I know a lot of you probably fear that word, and I'm sorry, but that's kind of the way that it was. And the progress we have seen spiritually since that time, when it was very acceptable to carry around a sword, and if you felt so inclined, you could behead somebody for whatever reason. Wasn't a whole lot of judiciousness going around in those days, to where we are now, where when we have one of these spectacles of violence that we do have these days, it is shunned, and it is fought against, or by some of us anyway. We're trying to continue to minimize violence. And violence has minimized considerably since those 2,000 years ago. And for me, it is because that Spirit of Christ has kind of transcended humanity. And we love one another kind of intrinsically now. I'm a substitute teacher, and I see these kids and the way they talk. And some of them are little spoiled jerks. And a lot of that they learn from their parents. But at heart, as human beings, they're just so beautiful and loving and caring, because according to Genesis 1, that's how we were all created. In the beginning, it was good. We were good. That's how we were created. And then since then, we've gotten into this whole evil scenario. And especially among the religious folks, they really like to point out evil, and because they have evil in their hearts. And that's what Jesus had said when they, asked other times about healing someone on the Sabbath. He's like, why do you have such evil in your hearts? And unfortunately, religious people do. And when I share messages about here about why I prefer Jesus over Paul, per se, there are some who are so religiously motivated to continue to venerate Paul and to put their Bible above God and to talk about these religious ideas like progressive revelation and all these different nonsensical issues that they have created over the years to stick to their very limited religious views. And they just can't open up the basic, simple truth of Christ you're here to love. And I love all these people, and I love the role Christianity has played in our journey to get to now. And looking forward, I'm sure it will continue to play a role, but for a lot of people, that role is being very, very minimized as they are realizing that the Bible does have errors. Yeah, it really does. As much as people want to just ignore them and uh, fluff over them, there are fallibilities in it, and it's not perfect. For me, I do think God is perfect. As much as we may question, the suffering that's in the world, and especially the unnecessary suffering and all of that kind of stuff. But for me, this life is God's work of art. And as an artist, it gets messy sometimes. That's the best explanation that I can have for it. However, I still have this relationship with the creator of all that I am. When I was a young Christian, I was told to cultivate, that I was able to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. I was told to make him my personal Lord and Savior. Now, I have thoroughly gone over the red letters of Jesus Christ, and I wrote this book called Jesus Said Stuff. And never, ever did Jesus say that we needed to accept him as our personal Lord and Savior. That is a Roman American Christianity thing, but that is not the message of Jesus Christ, not the gospel of Jesus Christ. The gospel of Jesus Christ is that you can turn from your misguided understanding, realize yourself as a conduit of God's love, and enjoy this kingdom of heaven that you are in and that is around you. Most Roman American Christianities will say, no, it's about the Bible and you need to accept Jesus to go to heaven. And it's not wasn't the message of Jesus Christ. So if you want to refute me, that's fine. Go right on ahead. I'm used to it, because religious people are trained very well to respond to certain things the same way. And they do it again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And so for those of us who are open to a greater spiritual understanding, a more significant experience of divinity beyond the Judeo-Roman American Protestant Christianity that we've come to see today, that does not exhibit any of the traits of Christ many times. Um, if you're open to doing that, that's open to you. You can do that. But I also recognize there are many people who just aren't going to do that. And if you are one of those people who is open to a more progressive spirituality and allowing the layers of God to unfold before you, then you need to recognize there are many, many people who are going to cling to their Roman understanding of Him. They are going to repeat the Nicene Creed every single week, just as they have their entire lives. And they're going to believe those are the limits to God. So recognize that and be okay with them. Love them anyway, as Jesus loved all the Pharisees, as wicked as they were. For woe to those folks who are going to continue to say, no, God is small and limited where I can understand him, because God is so much bigger than all of these religious diatribe. As Jesus said, God is much bigger than the Sabbath. The Sabbath was created for you. The Bible was created for you to use as a tool, okay, to use as a crutch in these rough times that we've had to get to this point where we have a deeper spiritual understanding of who God is and how God infuses us. And if you continue to need to use that crutch, you go right on ahead. But please understand, it's just a crutch to help you. And if you lean on it too much and you continue to refuse to open to the true gospel of Jesus Christ and allow him to just love through you, then that's what you're going to do. But for me and others, we want more and we accept more and we know that we're called to more. So if you're called to more, bless you for it. Thank you for coming and enjoying this little diatribe of mine. If you'd like to read Jesus Said stuff, you can go to my website, stevemc.xyz. You click on this cover and you can read it for free. Please let me know what you think. I'm really curious about opening this conversation up a little bit more and realizing that Christ is much bigger than Christianity. See ya. Have a great day.